everyone, and welcome back to my booktube channel, Lisa in Bookland. This is my December 2023 reading wrap up. So I did read a good few books in December, which was lovely. I think I did manage to finish the year out with a bit of a bang, and also read a good few books that I really enjoyed as well, which is nice. So actually one of the first books I read in the month was Ramage by Dudley Pope. Anybody that's been here for any length of time knows that I do like my Napoleonic Wars naval fiction, and I've always felt like Remage was kind of the one big hitter that I hadn't read from, and I picked this up second hand, so I was really excited to get to it. And yeah, it was a really fun adventure as it says on the cover. Nothing that particularly struck out at me, but I did really like Dudley Pope's writing style, and I did like Ramage as a character, so I think that I will get on with him. It's obviously such a huge commitment to go to these series. I know that the Ramage series also has many entries in it, but once you've been introduced to them and you kind of enjoy them, it is nice to be able to just dip in and out. And this actually starts off really early as well, which I really, really like. This is set in 1796, so as opposed to Aubrey-Maturin ones, that's kind of issue they ran into, that they started too late. When I've read a few more of these, it would be like and as well as the Alexander Kent ones, it would be my intention to kind of do a video about all of the naval series I enjoy, but I just feel like I haven't read enough yet, so I don't know when that'll appear, but look out for it in the long-term plans. So I did read 2 Victorian classics this month, so we're kind of getting a little bit back into it, but probably not 2 very difficult ones. The first one I'd been reading for a good while actually, so I'm delighted that I got some time in December to focus on it and finish it off, and that was my reread of Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I so really want to like this book because people enjoy it so much, but I have to say it's probably still my least favourite Bronte, which I know is shocking to a lot of people. Yeah, I just don't really like Gilbert, and I can see why it's revolutionary, and I appreciate the themes in it. I have to say my favourite part, weirdly, is Helen's section in the middle. It's the other 2 sections, especially the 3rd section, that I really don't like. So yeah, I think I'll just have to be happy with kind of appreciating this less than other people. I don't know, maybe the theme of motherhood obviously is a big theme in it, and that's, I suppose, not having any children myself. It's not a theme that particularly appeals to me hugely. And also Gilbert Markham, could he not just have been friends with her? I don't know, I found it a bit frustrating. I really had wanted to reread this to see if I'd appreciate it more in a next read, but yeah, I think I'll just have to be happy now with my stance that The Tenant of Wildfell Hall just isn't the Bronte novel for me, unfortunately. So the other Victorian novel I read then was actually another Sherlock Holmes, A Study in Scarlet, by Arthur Conan Doyle. Last October I read a Sherlock Holmes short story, and I absolutely loved it, and I said I'd read more Sherlock Holmes, and I haven't yet, but I was confident enough that I would enjoy him when I did eventually get around to it, that I said I'd like to read them in order. And The Study in Scarlet is the first appearance of Sherlock Holmes, and is where him and Watson meet. So it's nice to see it from the start, and to I have seen the series Sherlock, so to spot the parallels there, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the short story, but still very nice to have read. So yeah, I expect hopefully I'll get to continue my Sherlock Holmes journey this year. I did read one other classic, I suppose a novella. It was obviously coming up to Christmas, so I read The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffmann. This is really inspired by a Nutcracker fever in me, I suppose, because I didn't get to see a live performance of The Nutcracker, unfortunately. I've seen snippets of it before, shortened versions, but I never saw a full version. I did go to the cinema to see the Royal Ballets. Sometimes they stream stuff to the cinema, so I saw it in the cinema here, the Royal Ballet's performance of Nutcracker, and I absolutely fell in love. I loved it. So I just wanted more Nutcracker in my life, so I read this novella. It was interesting to compare it with the ballet, and yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a bit more of a children's story, obviously, but it's nice to know where it came from. I believe there's also a version by, I can't remember who the author is, I'll put it up on the screen, but yeah, it was a nice Christmassy read, and it replaced the Christmas Carol for me me this year as my Christmas read, though I don't think it will replace the Christmas Carol in my long-term affections. So on to some historical fiction. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a book I was also reading for a while and had kind of left down and had to pick up again. And unusually for me, it's a young adult book. And it's just one I saw cheaply somewhere, and I think I'd vaguely heard somebody mention it before, but it's Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nicholls, which is set around the period of the First World War and also obviously significantly during the suffragette movement in London. And it follows three kind of, I suppose, teenagers. They're like older teenagers. Evelyn, who's from a wealthy background and would really like to go to school, but she can't because she's a woman, or at least her family are very resistant to her going. And she also has kind of a friendship with this guy called Teddy, who she basically drags around to all these suffragette rallies. There's May, whose mother is a suffragette or is involved in the suffragette movement, and then Nell, who is kind of from a poorer background. And it's about the like friendships between them. There's an LGBT component of this, which is nice as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about the suffragettes through this, especially the kind of different groups of suffragettes that there were. Like, some obviously had more like violent means of accomplishing things than others, and kind of the different ways that different classes of society interacted with them. I think I'd have actually enjoyed this a lot more when I was the age for young adult fiction, because I was always looking for historical fiction, young adult fiction, before I knew what that was, or knew how to describe it. But yeah, it was probably just a little bit too young for me at this stage of my life. But yeah, still would recommend if you're interested in the suffragette movement. I think, I'm sure if I went looking, there are books, and there are loads of books about this for adults, but I just happened to spot this one, which is why I picked this. So speaking of the First World War, then I also read this book, Behind the Lines by W.F. Morris, from a collection called Casemate Classic War Fiction. This book was first published in 1930, which is obviously very soon after the end of the First World War, so it was interesting to get that more immediate viewpoint on it, I suppose. And I was attracted by the plot of this because it was seemed kind of unusual. It's one of those classics. It says what's going to happen on the back of the cover, and you think that's going to happen in like the first 5 chapters. In reality, it happens halfway through the book. So I'm not going to explain what exactly happens, but I can say, for various reasons, the main character in this ends up having to kind of live behind the lines, as the title of the book suggests, like outside of the kind of main British army because of something that happened. He's kind of on the run. So yeah, it's kind of how he manages and the friendships with the people he meets there. There is romance involved. So it was interesting to read something that was a little bit different, though I wouldn't say it was my favourite First World War novel. But yeah, certainly an interesting one. So sticking with the World War related historical fiction is something that I enjoyed a huge amount more, and that is the Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. I absolutely delighted that I own this in this beautiful hardback, but this was an unmitigated success. So it follows this girl called Christabel Seagrove and her 2 kind of siblings. They have a very complicated family life. At the very start of this book, Christabel's father has remarried a woman, so she ends up having half siblings, and yeah, it gets even more complicated than that, but I won't go into it. But definitely the highlight of this book for me was like the relationship between the different siblings. This book starts off in the early 20th century, in 1919. So obviously the Seagrove siblings are kind of coming of age as the Second World War breaks out, and the different ways that they end up becoming involved in the war. But that's, I suppose, the second half of the novel. The first half of the novel is really about their kind of eccentric childhood.
Could have given less details. What I wanted to say here is there's like multiple different viewpoints, so you're not just seeing the children's viewpoint in their childhood, but you're also seeing the parents, and they aren't always very good parents. They definitely have their own lives. There's kind of lots of parties happening, definitely marginal, if not outright, child neglect, and it's all in this kind of crumbling house, which yeah, just the parents' different friends, people living around. So yeah, the childhood section, I think I made it sound quite boring here, but it really is a great part of the book as well as the later sections.
And the name of the book is actually one day this kind of whale washes up on the beach near their big house. Like, I should have mentioned, they are wealthy, they have this big huge country house, but one day this whale washes up on the beach beach beside their house, and Christabel decides that she'll turn it into the theatre. So that's kind of runs throughout the book as well. She obviously has that creative instinct on how to put on plays and things. So it's so hard. I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's so hard to describe this book because there's so much going on with it. After I finished reading this book, I felt like I'd lived a life along with these siblings. I highly recommend either if you like the kind of Second World War stuff, also if you like kind of reading about is it called the Roaring 30s, or kind of that flapper generation of people, if you like reading about parties, kind of Great Gatsby style stuff, that would be for you as well. Finally, 2 more books. As the first one I'm going to talk about is a contemporary, and oh my god, I can't believe I finally read this author. Marian Keyes' Rachel's Holiday. I was lent this by somebody in my book club, and I always knew Marian Keyes was such a big hole in my reading that I hadn't got to her yet, and I have to say I absolutely loved this. It's the first Marian Keyes I've read, so I'm not sure if I'll get on with her writing completely yet, but I have to say she's definitely, when it comes to maybe chick lit authors, Irish authors that you think of, this has been my favourite so far, but I am very aware that I probably loved the premise of this especially, so it'll be interesting to see whether I'll get on with the other Marian Keyes as much. But in this, Rachel Walsh, she has loads of books, and they're all about a different one of the Walsh siblings, which are a very interesting family. She lives in New York, and basically she's got big drug and alcohol problems. She is obviously in denial. She doesn't think she has any issue, but at the very start of the book she ends up overdosing in her apartment, and her roommate finds her, and her roommate calls her relatives in Ireland and be like, come over and get Rachel sorted. So she ends up being deported home to Ireland by her family, and she checks into this rehabilitation centre that she thinks is going to be filled with celebrities and things, but is definitely not the case. They're just kind of normal people in there that have addiction problems, and you just end up rooting for all of them so much, and it's just interesting, I suppose, their different backgrounds and how they adapt to life in the centre, or as Rachel becomes more accustomed to life, how she reacts to the newer inmates. And it was just a really sensitive portrayal of rehab, I think. And just Rachel trying, I suppose, to first realise that she has problems and then trying to get over them and kind of come to terms with how it's affected her life in the past. It was just really touching. So I tore through this book. I do have, again, Rachel on my shelf, so hopefully I'll get to read that again soon. And more Marian Keyes for me for sure. And finally is a Christmas present I got, and it was my most anticipated Christmas present this year. I was looking forward to it so much, and I'm really impressed with myself. I did end up holding out to get it for Christmas, and that's Murta by Christopher Paolini. So not really usual for my channel, but when I was younger I was a massive fan of the Inheritance books. I didn't read a lot of fantasy, but I loved the Inheritance books. And my favourite character in the Inheritance books was Murta. I always thought he was way more interesting than Eragon, who I liked Eragon as long as he wasn't lusting after Arya, because I don't know, I just didn't like Arya. I know, coming out with all the controversial things now, but yes, so I was absolutely thrilled when Christopher Paolini said that he was going to release a book that focused on Murta after the events of the Inheritance novels. I will say from this point onwards there are massive spoilers for the Inheritance series, and most especially the second book, Eldest. So I'm just giving you a chance to log off. Okay. Yes, at the end of that series, Eragon goes away to form this new kind of dragon colony outside Allegasia, and Murta is left behind with his dragon Thorn after the fall of Galbatorix. Murta, not through his own choice, was allied with Galbatorix during the war, so he is trying to find a way to fit in this new society that after the war is finished. And the answer in this book really is he isn't fitting in. He's just going around Allegasia kind of surreptitiously in this book, trying to solve this problem that has been presented to him. I can't even, I wouldn't say that the details really stick in my head too much. There is opening for another book in the series, which I really hope that there will be, as there's so much more potential with Allegasia to flesh out afterwards. But the main thing here wasn't actually the plot, it was just Murta's character and how he carries the guilt of what he's done and how he deals with being like ostracized from society. And do you know what it reminded me an awful lot of, when just to stay on the plot, it reminded me a lot of like Narnia, the Voyage of the Dawn Treasure, like, you know, kind of confronting your own personal demons and kind of just a quite episodic, going around and doing little things, meeting different characters in different places. It really reminded me of that, oddly, especially where he kind of ends up towards the later part of the book. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I won't go into any more detail. But yes, the relationship between Murta and his dragon Thorn also is obviously, they had a really difficult life under Galbatorix, and they've both been affected by this. Like, I thought that was really interesting, and like, it would have been so easy just to focus on Murta, but you obviously see Thorn's demons here, and sometimes they, like, when you're so used to reading the Inheritance series from Eragon's point of view, you don't like, his relationship with Saphira, I suppose, is mostly quite easy, but this relationship is a lot more strained. So that was really interesting to read. And also the friendship that Nasuada had with Murta comes into this as well, and how that continues after the Hall of the Soothsayer in the last book of the original series. I started reading this on Christmas night, and I continued reading it on St. Stephen's Day. We were supposed to go on a family visit on St. Stephen's Day evening, and I didn't go because I was stuck in this book. So it was just such an enjoyable read, and I really do love this series. And I suppose series that you had an affection for as a teenager will always kind of stick with you, so it's such a treat to get a new entry, and I know I definitely will reread this again. So yes, that is all the books that I read in December. I hope you all had a nice Christmas or nice holidays and a happy new year. We just took down the decorations today, which is sad, but you know, it had to happen at some stage and get back to normal. But all the best for 2024, and I'll talk to you next Thursday for my next video.